Hello and welcome to the Plaid Oracle. I was all set to do Cancer's reading today when the collective kind of asserted itself. I had this thought that I should do the collective reading today. And I'm doing the readings. The reading is how to access your magic. I mean, not just things we think of as magic, psychic gifts, intuition, that sort of thing, but the magic that is you, right? Your personal essence that has perhaps been buried over time. If you know San of San Tarot, she has this hypnosis video, sort of a self-hypnosis kind of thing, where she speaks, and part of what she talks about is how over time we can take on shapes, right? We become shaped by our experiences, and these can impede the flow of our natural energy. So I was thinking of that, and the card that popped out almost immediately from the Faeries Oracle, which has been my inspiration for this round of readings, is the Master Maker. And I'm going to read you a little bit of his description from the book. The Master Maker is the master of the forge, upon which we create our futures and forge our own souls. He sees the world beyond the other world, the world of first causes. Through his magic, he brings them into his own world of fairy. From his world, these concepts trickle down into our own, through dreams and visions picked up by artists and craftsmen everywhere. But he makes the first, the original. He is the great inventor, and the sign above his door reads, "Practical problems solved here." He sings as he works, and as in all fairy magic, his song does as much to shape objects as do the blows of his hammer. Healing cups, magic swords, fairy jewels, crowns of stars, and other bespelled works of the finest craftsmanship pass through his forge and beneath his hammer. The master of fire, air, earth, and water. He adds the fairy element of moonlight to everything he creates. He would be the first to tell you that superb craftsmanship, however magical, is hard work. Joyful and energizing hard work, but always challenging. As the Master Maker, he reminds us, no job is too small to do beautifully. His work is done as well as possible, even where it will never be seen by anyone else. And also, the last statement, craftsmanship is also a labor of love. And that, I think, is part of the crux of this message for you, for us, together. Anyone who comes upon this video and even beyond. So the first card that appears is this Eight of Swords. And actually right below it, the next underlying in the following deck, is this Hanged One from the Ancestral Wisdom Tarot. And so these two, right, they're very much, they have a similar, although not identical, message. So this first one, and actually underneath this is this Moon card, which is interesting to me, right, of the Master Maker adding moonlight to his creations. And here is this moon, but it's coming up, in this case, as an anxiety, right? This is the Eight of Swords, the self-imposed mental prison. All right. That we have to sort of break out of on our own. Right, that's the theory, right, that nobody can come and break you out, because if they do, you won't have the strength to fly on your own. But, well, I'll talk about the but later. So I think this first row is the call of the Master Maker and the Fae in general. So the first thing is strength. And it's a very friendly strength, this wild unknown strength. Right? Nobody's prying his jaws open. He is, right, he's strong unto himself. The symbol of infinity drawn on his third eye. And this, I think, is a statement of truth. That we all have this strength within us. And what we are being called to do is choose. Choose. And it may be, I think, that we haven't wanted to, or perhaps we feel like we can't. That our choices are incredibly limited by our current circumstances. But they are calling on us to choose and then set out. And this fool in particular, right, is very childlike, right? The little chick, ready to rush out and explore in the world. And he isn't, right, he isn't completely finished, right? He has growing to do as he goes. But he is setting out, he's chosen a direction and he's going. And there will be other folks met along the way, right? We will all run into each other. We in this collective who are undertaking this work, the work of the Master Maker. And this next card, right, the Devil, which can signify, you know, addictions or things that we're chained up by. But here, I think he's actually a figure of creating freedom, right? He's got those hot feet. His feet are on fire because he's ready to go. He's got energy just flowing out of him through his hooves. He's got kind of a self-satisfied, self-confident, slightly mischievous look on his face. He's got the pentacle there on his third eye. The symbol of Venus, among other things. And the pentacle she forms as her orbit is viewed from Earth. So I think that, right, that this call, right, this devil is the anti-establishment, subversive, right, the adversary that the Satanists talk about. Go against your programming. Right, if your programming, if your beliefs about your condition and your circumstances and what is possible in the world, leave those behind. Just go against them. Right? Yours is the strength of infinity. And then, you know, judgment. Rising up. Rising above and beyond whatever circumstances are down in this busy dark space that may be filled with, you know, stuff that people are telling you, stuff that you've told yourself, things that you're hearing in the news and reading on the social media, and, you know, that your neighbors are saying or talking about. I know that even in, you know, sort of new age spiritual spaces, there's been a lot of anxiety, a feeling of constriction. And this is asking you to leave that behind, to get above it, not in a, you know, you're better than these people sense, but in a perspective sense, to see farther, to see outside of the, you know, tiny space. Because beliefs can be restrictive. Assumptions about how reality works are restrictive. And there was 11:11 on the timer. So now we come back to this Hanged One. And beyond this baby is the sun. But I think that we were all, right, we're all in here. And who could blame us, right, if we wanted to retreat into the womb in the past several years? Right? The world seems to have gone completely bananas. And, right, this, you know, getting, you know, away from it all into the warm. But taking a rest, you know, re-energizing yourself, you know, taking care of yourself, these things are appropriate. But if you stay there for too long, then it gets harder and harder to leave and to see that the sun is out there. And this next row, I feel like, is a real exposition of, right, what is blocking us. Because firstly, we have the Nine of Swords. Yeah. Overthinking, perseverating, up in the head, catastrophizing, doing what I call FEMA thinking, right? Trying to plan for every possible disaster that could happen. You know, maybe lying awake at night in the wee hours, the hour of the wolf, when things seem to close in on us. And then there's this Six of Cups. And I see both its kind of traditional meaning of nostalgia, right? So stuff from the past that we're dragging around with us. Things that we learned when we were kids that may have served us then, right? So that we could survive the schoolyard. And our families of origin. But also how daunting it can be to learn new things, right? This is Merlin teaching Arthur. And it can feel like there's a giant gap, you know, between what you know and what you would like to know. All right, and I feel the same sort of here, right? This is the Three of Staves, the Three of Wands, right? Kind of setting out on adventure. Getting together with others and doing things. But this sort of could feel like, right, they're kind of, right, they aren't sure they're going to get on the boat. I mean, did they bring enough stuff? Do they have everything they need? Is the boat seaworthy? Right? You can see all kinds of worries going on here. And then the moon appears again. And for sure, in our culture, the moon has negative associations. Lunacy, confusion, distortion. You know, even in the tarot, right, the moon often speaks of these things. And, you know, not to jump to the cliche thing about the suppression of the feminine, but I think that it is partly about that. Of things that are mysterious, not immediately clear, things that don't have perhaps a ready logical explanation, cycles of things. You know, in the moon, right, it does cycle, you know, kind of, but it shifts a little bit through the calendar because it isn't an exact number of days. And it doesn't spend exactly the same amount of time in each zodiac sign. Its orbit is slightly elliptical. So while it is cyclical and regular, it is also slightly irregular in terms of sort of whole numbers and things being exactly the same. We kind of like things, right, to be exactly the same. We like, you know, knowing when something is, right? You know, it's in exactly the same place every year. But it isn't even exactly, you know, our birthday, even if looked at from an astrological perspective. Our solar return, the moment when the sun is at exactly the same spot as it was when we were born, isn't always on the day that we think of as our birthday. Right, in a calendar way. So we've kind of, right, we've chopped time into bits, we've made it really regular, but this underlying irregularity, this underlying mystery is still there. And I think it gives us discomfort until we embrace it. And that, right, is kind of what this next row, or actually the next two rows, are about. So firstly, we have this Ace of Air on the unicorn, and I immediately, when I saw this underlying, I saw this rider and unicorn kind of going up to this chrysalis and to this baby in the womb and poking, right? Not making a hole in the container, but, right, like, wake up, giving a little poke. Wake up, it's time to go. You know, when I was little, I would get woken up by someone coming in my room and saying, it's time to wake up. Fortunately, I was the kind of child who woke up easily. But I think that perhaps we haven't been listening. I think that there has been a gentle, it's time to wake up. And maybe we've turned over, we've tried to hit the snooze button, we, don't want to come out of the womb. So now we're getting a little, right, we're getting a stronger poke with the horn. Right in the butt. And then there's this page, or rather Ace of Cups following that. Singing, right? Not only are we getting poking, but we're getting this singing, this bird song. You know, birds sing at dawn. The dawn chorus. And this bird is like, it is past dawn. It is time to get up. And then there's this magician who is not us in this particular case, I don't feel. but is giving us this look. Right? I feel like this is the teacher, perhaps the master maker, appearing again, waiting for us at the workbench for our lesson. Where we are still apprentices at this point. And we're all going to be in a different place. Some of us are brand new apprentices, just stepping up to the bench for the first time. And then some of us, right, are a little further along, and some may even be journeymen, right, on our way to being the master. I mean, we'll of course never be quite as fabulous as the master maker, but masters here in our own lives. And he's waiting at the workbench for us. And this, I think, is to say that we're not alone, right? That this is a collective reading, that we're all here. We're all kind of arriving in the classroom together. This is the Three of Wands repeated, but there's more enthusiasm here, right? I mean, maybe we're a little noisy, right? Like kids at the beginning of class before the teacher really gets going. But we're here, ready to go. And what's possible is this Nine of Cups, this overflowing Nine of Cups with this serpent of change, this kundalini rising up the sides of the cup. We could make that at our workbench. If we can get over this Three of Swords fear that we've got going. And this, you know, this King of Pentacles always feels a little scary to me, right? Like this owl is sort of menacing. And there's this skull here. And I think the question here is, who are you? Are you the wee bird who's being menaced? Do you feel like the world is menacing? Or are you the owl who, you know, is A, curious, and B, going about what owls do, hunting? Not because they're evil or nasty or cruel or dominant or any of these things, but because that is natural. Owls are predators. And in the balanced world, they hunt. So how do you, right, is that concept painful for you? Is the idea that you are a predator, right? Again, not in a cruel or mean or dominant or authoritarian way, but in a natural way, that you seek what you need and what you want. So then we have this final row is sort of loveliness, the loveliness that is the possibility. And we start with this star. And she's totally possible. I mean, behind her we have the Nine of Swords, right, reappearing again a little bit. But behind that is the Emperor. And so I think that we are totally capable of banishing these thoughts of stopping, just stopping this kind of thinking, overthinking, turning away from it every time it starts to happen until the better thoughts are what's second nature. The beautiful thoughts, the loving thoughts are what's second nature. Star thoughts. And then we have this migration card, right? Moving along. Right? Migrating away from all the things that have held us back. From the Nine of Swords thoughts. From the Six of Cups worries. And feelings perhaps of inadequacy. And then this card, which is one of my absolute favorites in this deck, in plain sight. And here she is revealing the moon in her heart. So the moon is not something to fear. The unknown, the mystery, the flowing waters. You know, this moon card, right? For the longest time, and actually while I was doing this, right, this moon dominates this card, right? But there's this figure here that for the longest time I didn't even see. I've had this deck for a very long time. And the moon is so dominant. But this figure who's weaving, right, the loom of fate. I actually think that this is us. Both, right, in all of our incarnations. I think we weave our own loom of fate. We weave our own fabric of life. We are Clotho, who spins the thread, and Lachesis, who determines its length, and Atropos, who cuts it at the right moment. And I think that that happens over and over, right? We have different periods in our lives. I think those are all threads of different lengths and colors. And they get woven into this fabric of our lives that we are creating. And some of it is our wider self, who we are not, fully in touch with, in the sense that we can't see everything that our wider self does. We can't do it from our human body, our human brain, our human capacity. There are things that we cannot see. And so it can feel like there's this outside force that's somehow directing our lives. But we are creating our own fabric. Because our wider self is already a master maker in its full form, part of the all that is, who is the ultimate master maker. But here, the moon is in your heart. So coming to know that, to recognize the mystery, the loveliness, the emotion, the flow that is in your own body, your own heart. And then the High Priestess, the Oracle, the Seer, that we all have within us. Our intuitive guidance, our psychic gifts. At the Temple of Apollo on Mount Parnassus, where you would go to meet the Oracle, the most famous Oracle at Delphi, there were several inscriptions over the door, and the one that most people know is, I think, the most important one, which is "Know Thyself." Know thyself fully, not just as human and vulnerable, but as also non-physical, as soul, as powerful. Know thyself fully and clearly. And here is this lovely Ace of Cups. Right? This overflowing cup that we are being handed. And then another favorite card, this Edelweiss card, with again the moon and this crow flying overhead, and this figure with her lantern being drawn by the moon, being drawn forward by the mystery, but carrying her own light. And finally, the Six of Swords. And this is not just a boat. This is a magical peacock boat that we are on. So this is, right, this is the deal, right? If we've been frightened, despondent, maybe even despairing, the answer is to step up to the bench, the workbench, to take responsibility for our own existence on all fronts, and not just in the mundane way, but in the spiritual way. We have enormous power within us. If we are willing to see it, and then willing to live in a committed, loving way. I mean, it's what I refer to for myself as the way of the loving eye. Taken from John O'Donohue's talking about how we see the world and the different eyes we can have, judgmental, critical, fearful, or loving. To see the world through a loving eye, to see the world as the master maker does it, to sing as we go through life. And I asked the fairies for a little extra advice for us going forward. And the first thing that comes out is the singer of connection. So remember your connection to the source of all things, to your wider self, to nature, to your own power, to your loved ones. Now, under the singer card, and I'm not going to show it to you, is the card that comes, this deck comes with a blank card where you can draw a picture of your own fairy guide. And that card was under this singer of connection. So a confirmation of following your own guidance, what you want to do. Not what you think you're supposed to, not what you think other people will approve of. If you're like me and sometimes have these thoughts of justifying things, right, as if you're having a conversation with someone, trying to explain why you did X, Y, or Z. No. Your choices are your choices, right? Your inner guidance is your inner guidance. You don't have to explain that to anybody. And right? The first card here in the advice is Ta'om the poet. And he's a great character. I mean, he's a poet, but he's a little mischievous too. But see, right, take a lighter view of life. Life not as some heavy prose tome, like a textbook of history or a manual of some kind, but a poem. Life is a poem, life as poetry. And then Penelope Dreamweaver. So pay attention to your dreams, both in the night and during the day. What comes up for you repeatedly? What beautiful dreams do you have that maybe you've told yourself you can't have? What comes to you in real moments of connection, maybe when you're listening to music or walking in nature or hanging out with your friends or, playing with animals, right? If you have a pet. All these dreams. And then we have Taitlin, the sylph, who is the intellectual of the deck. Discernment, right? Intellectual discernment. Which is important, right? You don't want to get caught up in your head, but intellectual discernment, good judgment, right? Knowing what is intuition and what is anxiety, knowing the difference between a impulse born of pain and one born of joy, right? So using the intellect when it's appropriate. I mean, our brain is great. It should not be disparaged in its wonder and its ability to coordinate and discern and know and receive, right? Receive information. But discernment is required. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, honesty, integrity. Don't lie to yourself, particularly. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to never, ever tell another lie to anybody, because that isn't really practical. Right? We do sometimes have occasion to deal with people where maybe we have to tell a lie. Either because there's genuine danger or because, this person can't be reached. So there may be occasions in our life. But I would say do it as little as possible in terms of other people. But never, never, never lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. Be honest with yourself, not just about the difficult things, perhaps. Things that you have to let go of, or, acknowledging habits that you have, but also about the beautiful things. Be honest with yourself about what you want. What turns you on? Even if it seems unattainable or somehow wrong because of your, beliefs. Be honest with yourself about what you really want. What kind of world you want to move in. I have to say, sort of my disclaimer is that I do have a cosmology that allows for different timelines to be happening simultaneously. And so that those of us who are able, who follow this path of the master maker of making our lives, can move into a space where many of these difficulties and nastiness simply don't exist. And some of the issue there is that we won't be able to take everybody with us. There may be still people that live in the world who live in this other place, a place of suffering and pain and lack. And we have to release responsibility for all of that. That we can work to help others, to carry this energy of power and joy and the loving eye to others. But we can't force anybody into change. We can't shove anybody into it, right? Even this marvelous idea isn't going to poke a hole in your chrysalis. You have to make that move yourself. There's no other way to do that, and that's true of everybody. So if one of the things that's holding you back is that you don't want to be doing really fabulously well while other people around you are not, you gotta let go of that, because you are not helping. Perseverating and being unhappy yourself is going to do nothing for anybody else. That's an honesty thing too. What is it that you really want? And as I was laying out your reading, our reading, I felt this wave of relief. Isn't really the right word. I don't quite have a word for it. Like, I think that it is the feeling of breaking out of the chrysalis. It was like this rising energy that brought a little bit of tear to my eye. I didn't want to cry. It was like a, I don't know, it just wanted to rise up out of my body. And that's sort of unusual for me. I don't often get feelings. I'm more, right, like I get the sort of the whole reading in a concept, right, and like a clear cognizant knowing. And so I feel that it's very significant that I felt this. This, you know, our not just our soul, right? Our soul is joyful whether we are or not, but our own relief, our own ecstatic feeling as we break out of this chrysalis. That it is so, right? It's kind of, right, this feeling of discovery that the moon is within us. Right, kind of taking this cup of beauty and love and drinking it down. So I would say to all of us, we want to be honest with ourselves. We want to pay attention to our wants, our desires, our dreams, our feelings, our emotions, which are our guideposts. We want to allow ourselves to be happy, to be joyful, to feel good. Because that, right, that is the way to bring others with us. To see things anew. To release the idea that as the past has been is how the future has to be. You know, in astrology, when I first started learning it, it was really interesting to go back into my own history and look at, you know, kind of major aspects, transits that I had, and see what was happening in my life then. And to go back in history and see, oh, you know, what happened when, you know, the last time that Saturn met Pluto and these things. And, what does that mean for now? And that is the mistake. It was an interesting way to learn, but I know now that that is the mistake. Because if we look to the past to try and figure out the future, then all we're going to get is more past. We're just going to get, right? If this is what happened the last time Saturn and Pluto met, well, then clearly that sort of thing, that same flavor of thing is going to happen again. No. That has to stop. At least for all of us that are watching this reading, feeling this reading, me, you, we stop. Right? I don't care what happened the last time you had a Saturn return. If you're approaching your second one, or maybe you're getting a Saturn square coming up and the last time you had one, this happened. No. That is the way of stagnancy. That is the way of just reusing the old thing. It's like instead of making something new, you're just remaking the old thing over and over again. And I'm sort of getting along here, right? It's 46 minutes, but I'm going to continue because this has occurred to me, right? You may have had this thought, right? If you find a piece of clothing, right, a pair of jeans, a shirt, something, a pair of shoes that you really like, sometimes they'll stop making this thing, and then you'll feel like, oh, I should have bought like 3 pairs. And there's a logic to that, except that it sort of assumes that there will be nothing else that might be just as wonderful, just from some other source. It's a lack consciousness. This idea that we have to sort of keep reusing the past, that it's the only way to go forward, right? That we're so worried about uncertainty, about this moon, that we cling to the comforts of the past. Well, we know this thing happened, so now we can be prepared for the next time this thing happens. And I say again, no, no, and no. 47:47 on the timer just then, which is 11:11. No. The future is not set, it is not fated in terms of exact events. Yes, the planets move in cycles. Yes, there are energies. But that's just an energetic milieu. It's just a particular kind of challenge, a particular space. But anything can happen within that space. And now I feel the sort of the Reiki energy kind of passing through my hands, as if I've, for me, I don't feel like I channel energy. I feel like I put my hands in the energy that's always flowing. So I feel like this reading is really filled with this energy of moving into the future without any kind of set map, except for our own soul goals and desires. Come to an empty workbench. Pull up whole new materials. Make a new thing of your life that has never come before. Forget the past. The past was a bunch of experiences. They made you who you are. They taught you things. But you don't have to keep those things. Just, right, you look back on it with pleasure. It was there. But it is not a map for the future. It is not a map for the future. So I wish all of you the very best. I wish for you to come to the Master Maker, to come to the bench, and to make your life yours as you want it to be. And then spread that beautiful energy just by walking out into the world. I wish you the best, and I'll see you next time. So long.